Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm going to call at least the town council section of the meeting to order. And I'll look to Board Chair Tyrell to call her side of the meeting to order.
And with that, I will call the Board of Education meeting to order and refer everything over to Mr. Poulos, our town manager, and Mr. Reese, our superintendent.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the superintendent and myself, I just want to welcome everyone and thank you for your presence. This is an opportunity to build upon the conversation we've been having about the options for the middle school. And at this point in time, I think we've come to a consensus that we're moving forward with one option, and that is the Renovate Like New project. So we're here to go through a number of items here to kind of recap where we've been, what we're doing, and it'll lead off with Superintendent Reese, and then it'll go from there to our consultants, CSG, for their presentation, and then further on in the agenda, we'll get to debt service and the referendum schedule, and obviously have time for comments from both the town council and board. So I'd like to thank you and welcome you, and I'll turn it over to Superintendent Reese.
Thank you for the introduction. Good evening, Brian Reese, Superintendent of Schools. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to have your audience. We looked at what kind of information to put in front of you this evening, and we thought the place to start was a brief piece on why we're here and what we're looking to accomplish in this evening and the events in the future. So I start with a brief background and context. The brief background is in 1992, the middle school building was given a certificate of occupancy. The renovation going at the pace about the quickest pace it can, puts the building becoming operational as a renovated new building in 2028, 36 years later. 92 to me doesn't seem like that long ago. I remember it well. At the same time, 36 years is a lot of time for systems and buildings. So where are we in the context of other buildings? Wheeler School was renovated in 2020, Toflawn in 2009, Plainville High School in 2008, and Linden Street School in 2006, which is really good news. It means that in the picture in 2028, your oldest school will be 22 years old. Making the jump from 36 years old. That is a good move. We're really excited to be looking down that path. So just a few details. The life expectancy of a roof is about 25 years, and the middle school roof is letting us know 1 week at a time that it is beyond that time frame, and it would like to be replaced. And I don't have to tell you, but I think it's important. It's not just about the roof. It's about the issues that are caused when you have leaks, because some of them you know about and some of them you don't. And those, because they're behind walls. Leaks cause problems down the road. So again, that's a significant issue. The HVAC systems are at their end of life. And keep in mind that they're at their end of life now, and we're still talking about 3 years from now. Until we're in a place where we're talking about different systems. Remember, I'm the one clicking controls. So in terms of HVAC, these systems were built in the 80s with 80s technology, and these are large systems. Efficiency wasn't what it is now, and just to keep in mind, heating oil was 56 cents a gallon in 1992. That is a very different scenario, and that was out on the market. That wasn't what you could buy. It was probably less expensive for large schools compared to houses. So to give you an idea of that efficiency change in the last 30 years. In the 1980s, the standards were significantly different. If you can imagine the energy wasted with over 100,000 square feet of windows with 1980s technology. The chillers are well beyond life. They have done really well. The fact that they are running really speaks well. However, I know other systems who have been told they need to replace their chillers in 15 to 20 years, and that's not an unusual or a bad thing. So you're doing well, but it is time. The air quality standards of the 80s, even of the 90s, are significantly different than they are now. There's a lot more expectation because they know air quality is really important to learning and to providing a good program for our students. Our safety program is that of the 80s, where the issues of today, I don't need to go into them, you can look on the news if you want that, are different. The expectations are to have different security settings, and we have some of those, and we make up for it in people support, but it's not the same as having the building brought up to code with the current safety standards. They've done a wonderful job here of trying to keep the technology moving forward, but in the big picture, it was built on what 1980s technology was. And just to kind of go back, I believe it was 2010 that the iPad came about. And most kids, you talk to them now, the iPad's an old thing, especially the one that came out then. So we're talking about Apple IIe's when this came about. Green screens that really could do nothing except for excite people like myself who really loved computers at a very young age. So what do we get? So what do we get if we make this great movement forward? We get an environment that encourages collaborative teaching, models that put teachers working together collaboratively, and we do our best to do that now, but the environment doesn't support that. We have up-to-date technology that allows us to access it efficiently and give our students the best opportunity they can. It supports students to be working in cross-disciplinary areas. The most popularized one is STEAM, where you put all of the science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, you put them together and have students working on projects, and you build the building around that. It encourages us to really continue to grow our arts and our science, our robotics and our engineering programs, which supports our students on the pathways they choose, and also supports the current needs in the market for employment right now, because we want our students to be employed. It also, the needs of the individual student have also changed, and the expectations on schools have changed. And so we're really excited about the idea that the building begins to be, it's built around supporting the different levels of students and different needs of students, and really starting there. So mine was the quick kind of review. We thought you had a lot of this information, so we wanted to keep it brief. And we wanted to save all of the hard questions for the experts from CSG. And so I will thank you. I usually ask for questions. I don't see an inquisitive face around, and I also think your questions might be answered in the other two presentations coming. So if it's okay with the chairs, I'll pass the baton to Mark of CSG. We'll go from there.
Good evening, my name is Mark Early. I'm a project executive with Construction Solutions Group. Tonight I have Jim Giuliano here. He's the owner of Construction Solutions Group. He works intimately on a lot of our projects. So Jim's here to get more involved here on the Plainville project and learn more as we go through it together. So Jim's also going to help support us in some of the conversations around what it means to get that application filed prior to that June 30th deadline. So thank you. So some of you, we've updated some of these slides, and some of these may look familiar to you, but just wanted to take you back a little bit, talk about where we are today, how we got here. So pre-referendum process and timeline. On the left-hand side, you've got program and conceptual design phase. So we've checked all those boxes from our initial building and site analysis. Just remember, we did a full site analysis of the building. We had many, many meetings with key stakeholders. We developed a project timeline, we drafted the educational specs, created conceptual design options, went back, reviewed the ed specs, so there was a lot of back and forth on design and cost estimating. And then what we were also tasked to do was to prove that the building met the renovated new status for the state of Connecticut, and so that this application would go forward and be approved if submitted. And so we were able to prove that case, put that letter into the state, and identified that renovate new status paperwork. We reconciled our cost estimates and we established a project budget, and then had some final presentations when you had the capital projects building committee set up and presented to town council. So here we are today in that same sort of capacity where we've checked all those boxes. We have updated the cost estimate. We presented that at a joint meeting back in September. We've got a few more updates. If there were a few things that had come out of that meeting that came to light to us, an improved enrollment, right, or a little bit higher. You've got a little bit higher number in enrollment projections over the next 8 years, so that helped change those numbers a little bit, and we'll show you what that means for you all today. When we put the education specs together, again, we met with the key stakeholders. We had 30 individual participants in developing those draft educational specs. So there's a lot of buy-in in the design to date. We did help to identify long-range educational plans, focused on STEAM, as you had talked about, safety and security, collaborative spaces. We identified individual department goals, and we set parameters on projected enrollments. We've adjusted this year to show that updated projection of 561 students. I think we were focused on 554, I think, before. So the size and facility of proposed project capacity. So the following summary is based on that current population, which includes all the proposed spaces. So you've got a lot of core curriculum space, wide hallways, a lot of common space, and then you've got your direct program area for a total building area of 101,000. The actual building itself is about 113,000 square feet, but when we went back to the state, currently the municipality, you're all using the ground floor basement of that school for district storage. So there's about 7,000 square feet of district-wide storage. I think I've got that right. And about 4,000 or so feet of space that you lease to another school program, right? So we talked through the state. We'll have to go back again to OSCGR. Oh, it's not OSCGR anymore. It's OGA now. And just make sure that the approvals that they send us back then still are still valid. Yeah. And because they did recognize that 11,800 or so square feet as space that's not calculated into the use of what the students would be using. So that's where we come up with that 101. Again, when we put all the space standards together, we put our calculations in. It's about 96,000 square feet that the state would say if you were to build a brand new building today, we would only allow you to build that building up to 95 or 96,000 square feet based on the enrollment projections that you have over the next 8 years. So there's a gap there between the 101 and so about 5,000 or 6,000 square feet you'd have to be going back to this to the state with special legislation. We talked about that, talking to legislators about maybe getting that to really help impact. We haven't factored that into the budget, so we show that. We do break it out and say, here's what your savings could be if, in fact, you get special legislation, but it's not counted, it's not factored into the total project reimbursement at this time. So you'll see as I pull this together. Just a quick outline. This is, we looked at this at 2 levels. This is the main level of the plan. Remember, part of the reason why they look at middle schools differently today is you have a second gymnasium there that wouldn't typically be allowed to be built in a new middle school. You have an auditorium, which I believe is not typical. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, for a while, a few years ago, the state was not allowing middle schools to build auditoriums anymore. If you had it existing within your building, they would allow it to be a part of a renovate as new project. So just recently, they've kind of relaxed that requirement, and they do allow some auditoriums to go into middle schools, but they don't allow them for elementary schools, so.
Thank you. So the idea is to keep on the main corridor here all of the classroom space, large media center in the middle, your administrative and support services, counseling center, and then repurpose that additional gym for a fitness center, sort of health area. On the lower level plan is where all of the STEAM classrooms will be put together. So on the right of your page, you see the robotics, drafting, art rooms, wood shop, all of those there. And then on the left would still be the cafeteria, the serving area, and the kitchen, and the mechanical room. The design team and the really public schools team kind of really was trying to be cognizant of the space and conservative in the design plan. We talked about originally expanding the classroom spaces to almost 900 square feet. We pared that back so that we could be a little bit more conservative in the amount of work that would have to take place in the renovations, but still provides large classrooms. And we did open up a few classrooms to be double classrooms for larger spaces for sort of science labs and discussions like that. If we go to the budget summary, we kind of put together a comparison. So if you recall, back in 2022, the way that we had broken down our pricing, we said we've got a core construction hard cost. This is how much the building is going to cost. This is the bricks and mortar of the building. This is all the parts and pieces that come together. And then we've got a number in here. It's a percentage number, about 19% for owner's soft costs. And what those soft costs make up are the architectural fees. So you've got to hire your designer. You've got all of your third-party, like environmental reports. You're going to have your testing labs. You're going to have all of those other third-party contracts as the owner, aside from your construction manager or general contractor contract. You're going to have all of these other third-party costs. You've got FF&E, so furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So all the equipment that you would typically purchase, the tables, the chairs, everything that you see around here in this room kind of comes together into that FF&E budget. And then there's also an owner's contingency. So there's an owner's contingency which is designed to carry you through any change orders that might come out through the project, especially to renovate like new. You start opening up walls, you don't know what you're going to find, and there's always more change orders that come out of a renovating as new as opposed to a new construction. So it is a number that we always carry in that contingency line item. You want to make sure that you've got that identified. So really, that's your construction hard costs, your bricks and mortar coming together with all of your external owner soft costs. For a total estimated project cost. Back in 2022, that estimated cost was $58.7 million. And at that time, you had a reimbursement rate of, well, it was a little bit higher than that 65.36. That looks like I took it out, but it was 65.71, I believe. So you got $38.5 million back reimbursement from the state based on that number. We adjusted that number over the space standards. So remember, we had about just a little over 5% of your space that without that special legislation, without getting that waiver, we took that dollar amount out of that state reimbursement and said that $3 million is going to be on the municipal dime, right on your dime to pay for that and add to your bonding. And then we subtracted about 2.5% on ineligible. So some of the ineligible things that are typical in a school project would be if you were to do some work on the state road or out on the highway. The state says that's fine, you might need it for your school, but we're not going to reimburse you for that. That's not direct impact to program or the building. Things that, because you do have other spaces like the district-wide storage, and in this plan, the idea is to save money on portables and temporary classrooms, because you're going to have to relocate students somewhere while you're doing phased construction, is to take that district-wide storage, relocate the the storage materials elsewhere, and there was a plan discussed, and then convert those to temporary classrooms. So you might get reimbursement on some of that, but some of that might be ineligible. Any direct items like mechanical connections or plumbing or anything that runs through that space to support the other spaces, sometimes, or to support that space, might not be eligible. If there's windows that you're replacing in that space, those windows would need to be removed as an eligible item. Same thing within the rental space. So you're gonna look at the envelope, you're gonna do the roof, you're gonna do the windows, but the state will look at some of those spaces and say, we're not considering those spaces, so any work affecting those spaces would be ineligible. So we put in a percentage of 2.5%. So we do think that our owner soft cost percentages and our ineligibles are conservative percentages, but not that far off considering what we've seen in the last several projects that we've been working on. Again, remember, this does not include your interest rate on your bonds. So we took that 2022 numbers, and at the end of the day, it would have been $24.4 million of cost to bond for the town. In 2023, we came back, we were asked to update the budgets. This is the budget column that we presented back, or I presented back in September to the group, and we were at a little higher, 26.2 million, and so it was the hard cost jumped from 49.3 to 52, and then just a little, about $300,000 or $500,000 increase on the owner soft cost, based on a percentage of the increase of the others. You ended up about 61 million, just under 62 million. Your state reimbursement, now remember, it's 65.36%. That's your reimbursement rate now, and what we would figure and put into that application in June. So you're going to get that reimbursement on a higher number, so you're going to get more money back from the state, about $40.5 million on state reimbursement. So you're going to get more money back on a higher dollar project. The reimbursement adjustment over the space standards jumped a little bit because it's a percentage, as well as the ineligibles. So you were at 26. So you had about a $1.8 million delta had you gone forward back in 2022 to moving forward now. So then we said, well, hold on. We understood that your enrollment projections had changed, so we were at 554 and we went up to 561. So what that did is all those numbers up top stayed the same. So I'm looking at this highlighted yellow column. Your reimbursement rate stayed the same, and your space standards, however, went down because you're going to get a little bit more reimbursement, allowable reimbursement for additional students using up that space, and your ineligibles stayed the same. So you gained about you went from 1.8 to 1.3. So about $500,000. We saved about $500,000 just from that exercise with the enrollment. So that was a good catch. So again, looking at those numbers, that's what it would be for referendum. You'd be going out to tell the public that the project would be $61,913,336 with a estimated total cost to Plainville of $25,712,633. So, and then you show your reimbursement there. So that's about 1.3 different from back in 2022.
Martin,
Yeah.
when you speak to allow, you're speaking, when the state says they allow it, you're speaking to that it's their way, it's their financial contribution, meaning, doesn't mean they won't allow you to put whatever you want to in a middle school. It means that they pick and choose how many square feet per person they're willing to assign and reimburse you for at your reimbursable rate. So it's allowed to be put into the reimbursables,
Correct.
is what the allow means. Because there are many schools who build beyond the financial rate, but it's the way the state controls, the way the state equalizes how much they're contributing to districts. It's not really about what's good for kids necessarily. It's a financial measure. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay, so, and just because in non-financial terms, allow means something else, right?
Yeah.
So just for the group's edification, hopefully that was helpful to you.
So, should we just continue through and we'll open up to questions afterwards? So, we had a lot of conversations around special legislation. We did a lot of back and forth with the state with the special waiver. And we just talked a little bit about what that means. But there was one of the reasons why we would go back and talk to our legislators to say, hey, we've got this existing building. It's larger than what the state will allow us to allocate in terms of the size and space standards, but it really doesn't make sense for us to just lop off the extra gym or to eliminate space and the cost to do that just so we can fit into your box. And so we're asking you for some grace to kind of allow us to move forward, and here's why. We came up with 3 reasons in that letter that Superintendent LePage had written you've got single loaded corridors. So you've got these corridors that only open to one side. So you've got a lot of windows, exterior windows along the corridors. So that corridor space in a new design would utilize that space to open up into both sides of a building and allow for better traffic flow and et cetera, et cetera. But here we've got what we call single loaded corridors. We have an auxiliary gymnasium and an auditorium. We've got classroom size constraints, and you've got a lack of barrier-free accessibility. So there are some things with accessibility issues that the way the design creates barriers for free accessibility throughout the building. So that would be adjusted throughout the renovation. And then you've got additional space requirements needed for technology and education. We already heard Superintendent talk about the SEED program, especially the low best program that you have here in Plainville, and then the cost savings associated with maximizing the existing space. The site cannot easily be expanded on, and you really do have a sound building structure. It doesn't make sense to knock down a piece of that structure or reconfigure the building just to fit into their box. Next slide. There's been a lot of questions and talk and discussion around the choice program and what that means. And this was really just a way of simply identifying that the term school choice means parents have an additional opportunity to choose the schools their child will attend for an elementary and secondary school. I understand that you have a good number of choice students already in the district, and the state will allow currently for a choice bonus after the project is complete, based on the number of active choice students enrolled at that time. So 5% of MSP students are currently enrolled through that choice program. At least that was the data that was given back to us in 2022. And that MSP, if you maintain that percentage at the time, the state would most likely award a corresponding reimbursement. However, I don't know of any districts that have counted on that pre-referendum or identified that number when factoring in the cost, the total municipal cost, right?
Because it can fluctuate. We don't typically recommend that you count on that because at the end, this is counted at the end of the project. You're not sure, and you don't know, because this is a 36, 38-month long construction process. So at the end of the project, quite honestly, I think it's at the end of the project when the Board of Ed accepts the project as complete, which could be, sometime after the construction is done. So, you have to keep that in mind. Like to be conservative in our numbers, and we try not to, we have it there, we hope that we can get it, and, we'll check the box in the grant application, but, we try not to show it as a guarantee or this is what we're going to get.
We were asked to put together an anticipated design and and construction timeline. It's very simple, rudimentary hand chart that we put together that shows the next 5 years or 4.5 years out. Starting with 2024, and I broke it out into just quarters. So very basic, you've got 4 quarters per year, and in that first quarter of 2024, into that second quarter of 2025, that is the grant application and approval process. So if you're thinking about January, let's call it next month, starting 2024 and moving over the next 18 months through that process before you go through your referendum process, you submit your grant application prior to June 30th, and then it's the grant approvals and priority list. Actually, that really should expand right out to the second quarter of 2025, but what happens is in December, that last quarter of 2024, is a priority list that comes out. So all the applications that come in from the state puts that priority list together and submits it.
December 15th.
December 15th.
Yes. So
Go ahead.
all the grant applications are compiled, that are submitted by June 30th. And they're reviewed by the grants office to make sure that they're compliant with the requirements. And then they are put on what they call the priority list. And they have a priority list A, B, and C. And quite honestly, the A, B, and C, I'm not really sure, if there's any differentiation between those, because typically when the priority list gets approved, everything on the priority list gets approved. So that priority list is issued on December 15th. That goes to the legislative body for review, debate, and approval. And at the end of the legislative session, that list is then put into a bill for the governor to sign, and that usually happens in July of the following year, probably 2025. So that's the process, once the grant application is submitted, and, again, the application is reviewed by the state and put onto the priority list.
All right, so what would happen is you would see Plainville come up on the priority, Plainville Middle School, up on the priority list. It gets submitted, it goes through the session, legislative session, and it might be, it's going to be a long session.
Yes, because this year's a short session.
Right. You'll get that letter. The superintendent would receive a letter from the state saying, you've been awarded this project. So it's a year and a half from the time we're talking today to the time you actually have that letter in your hand. But once your project's on the priority list, can you talk a little bit about?
Yeah, so in the 15, 16 years I've been doing grant applications, I've not seen yet that a project has been taken off of the priority list. There was one incident where 2 schools were taken off, but it was more of a political issue, but they were put back on before legislation finalized and approved the priority list. So, in all the time that I've been involved, I've not seen a project not approved on the list. Obviously it was the first time for everything. I hate saying that, but we've seen, in my tenure in doing this, that pretty much if it's on the priority list, December 15th, it gets approved.
And so you should be familiar with this process as you've done all the previous schools, from I think it was 2006, 2008, right up to 2020, right? So that same process happened every time that you went through this, and this would be the exact same process. The way that we built this schedule is making an assumption that the town is going to make an investment early on, which would be once the grant application is submitted, that the town makes an investment to go out for an owner's rep, an architect and engineering firm, and then a construction management firm to work on the pre-construction process. And the design team really takes these few pieces of paper, this conceptual plan that we've shared, and they breathe life into that plan, and they turn that couple of sheets into, a couple thousand sheets of plans and specifications. And that process really takes, a good 12 to 15 months for a project this size. And so you take the 2 second quarters of 2024 to put your RFPs out for each one of those. You would have interviews, you would have a selection process, you would build your professional team, hire your professional team, and then allow the design phase and planning process to work. Again, the architect would come in, meet with end users, identify the best use. Maybe these drawings, conceptual drawings, they move, they change a little bit, but your number is your number. So once you get through referendum and you submit your application, that's the dollar budget that you work in. So this design process that you do focuses on that budget number from the beginning, that number or better, right? So the idea is, how do we continue to save the district money through that design process, but most importantly, how do we fit everything the district wants into that school within that budget? And part of the process that this three-pronged professional team does is during the design phase, there'll be what's called
There will be different design phases. We'll go through a schematic design phase, which is the initial design phase. At the end of the schematic design phase, we will do a professional cost estimate. The construction manager that is hired to perform the construction activities would undertake that endeavor. And once that schematic design estimate is produced, we typically have the architect also do an estimate, and they do a comparison between the two estimates, and they reconcile. And then we make a presentation to the building committee, and we'll probably go through some sort of value engineering process at that time to make sure that we're either on budget or a little bit below budget if we want to be. And then the next step, once that reconciliation process and that approval process from the building committee has been completed, we'll move into design development, which is the next level, more detail. And that's really kind of the core of the design process. That'll take about 4 to 5 months. Again, at the end of that process, before we go into the DD process, we have to go through a state review process called the Schematic Design Review, the SDR. And there's a checklist that the state, we have to abide by. We provide that to the state, all the requirements on that checklist, and the state will go through the budget, they'll go through the drawings, specifications, ask questions, and then they say, okay, we reviewed it, we're good with it, and we move on to the design development phase. Again, about a 4 to 5 month process to do the estimating process again, same estimating process, do a reconciliation, and then we have the DDR, the design development review by the state. A little bit longer checklist, more information required from the district, and more questions from the state. And we go through that process, and they say, okay, we're satisfied, move on to the construction document process. And typically, the construction documents, because the design development process is more intense, the construction document process is more of a refinement of the drawings at that time, making sure that the different disciplines are coordinated, checking dimensions, things of that nature, finalizing finishes. And once that is done, we do a construction document estimate, and we go to the state for what they call a plan completion review, a PCR. And once that has happened, again, that's more intense, much more. The checklist is much longer, Much more information is required at that point. And that usually, the SDR and DDR will take about a day, maybe 2 days. But the PCR could, depending on the size of the building, and I would say, a building of this size will probably take about a week, week and a half to 2 weeks, depending on how busy the state is. But they do spend more time looking into the documents. They'll look into the specifications, make sure the specifications and the bid documents and the drawings are all coordinated. They may have some comments. We would have to address those comments. Once that's completed, the state will issue a authorization to bid, and then that starts the public bidding process.
You want to talk just for a quick second? So we identified that first quarter of 2026 is going out to bid to our subcontractors. It's a public process. It's all transparent and open book when we open all those
Correct. Yeah. So during the PCR process, and just after, your construction manager will be assembling bid packages, electrical, HVAC, plumbing, masonry, roofing, electrical, did I say that? Finishes, so on and so forth. And once we get the approval to go out to bid, your construction manager will then publicly advertise to go out to bid, and issue the bid documents to the general public for bids. We get those bids, by a certain date. The construction manager will determine when those will be due. They have to be opened publicly, read aloud publicly, and the low bidders would be reviewed by the construction manager to make sure that they're complete and comprehensive, and we'll do a series of what we call scope reviews, where we'll bring in, or the construction manager will bring in, and CSG usually is a part of those meetings, and they will make sure that the scope that the trade contractor has provided or understands is the scope that was issued, and we make sure that any ambiguities, any conflicts are resolved, discussed, and if that low bidder is found to be in compliance, we make a recommendation to the building committee to move forward with that. But those recommendations will come into what we call a GMP, a guaranteed maximum price, that will be issued by the construction manager. And in that guaranteed maximum price will be all his trade contractors that were the low bid and met the requirements of the scope review, as well as a host of other conditions, the drawing list, and so on and so forth. And once that's approved, then the construction process starts.
So, we kind of came up with a very basic three-phase construction process with some overlap in between the phases. When you hire your professional team to come together, your construction manager is going to look at logistics, they're going to walk through the school, they're going to identify, and they may come up with more improved ways of building the building, working with the
they're going to work with the administrators, also the design team, because the design, especially when you're designing new mechanical systems, electrical systems, cutoff points are critical. So yes, the phases may look a little bit different than what we're anticipating now, based on how the design progresses and where a logical cutoff point would be.
And we just went through this process in Reynolds, right? Sort of similar?
We did do that, yes. And so we adjusted some of the phases as a result of marrying up with mechanical and electrical services to make sure that it made sense to take over certain areas. We made some areas a little bit larger, made some areas a little bit smaller as a result. We're going to be turning over our third phase next week. 2 weeks, excuse me.
So just moving on from the schedule, we've just got 2 more quick slides. This is really, we've been asked to kind of talk about what are some of the steps to get us to application. Jim, you've already done a great job kind of working us through that. I don't know if you really want to touch on a few things, but this is from referendum to application submission, right?
Right, and, and Mark, you on that second or first slide, if you want, many of the items that are required in the grant application have been completed. Your ed specs, the budget, the estimate, those are major components to a grant application. Obviously, the next major component, the component that will allow us to submit is the referendum approving the funding. Obviously, we can't move forward without that, or can't submit a grant application without that. So,
or without the intent, right?
Without right. Excuse me. Yes, you're correct. So, based on everything I see and I know that we have completed, we're pretty much ready to go to submit the grant application. And should we have a successful referendum, we get that information and we compile the information and submit it, upload it to the state in the course of the system.
So a couple of things that would need to be resolved in order to get you to referendum is that the Board of Education would be authorized to apply to the Commissioner of Administrative Services to accept or reject a grant for the construction of the middle school, and that the Capital Projects Building Committee or building committee that might be appointed would be hereby established, and the building committee with regards to the construction of the middle school, and that at least the preparation of schematic drawings and outline specifications for the construction of the middle school of Plainville are hereby authorized. So, and then the town manager and the director of finance are authorized to prepare the bond language and documents for the middle school of Plainville, renovate its new project, including all other documents, procedures by the town's charter and state statute in the amount of that $61,913,393. And the referendum must be scheduled and results reported to the Office of School Construction Grant. I believe that's correct prior to November 15th of 2024, but I would ask that you just check with your bond attorney to make sure that that is correct. That is sort of similar language that was in discussions back in 2022. So just to reiterate the point that Jim and I were just talking about is you can submit an application in June and wait till an early November referendum. Towns do that depending on where they are in the process, where they are in communications, things like that. So you do have options. The question was asked, if you go to referendum, does it help, I don't want to use the word sell, but to convince the state that you're prepared and the town's on board with your project?
Yeah, I think, the state does like to see, that the district has committed, to the project. A successful referendum obviously does that. Not to say that you have a commitment to hold a referendum, let's say in November, usually on election day. The state gives you that option, should you so choose to do that. But if they know that you already have the funding committed, that they won't say it, but that kind of gives them a much more a better comfort level to move forward with processing the grant application.
And that's everything.
Any questions up to this point from anyone? All right, next.
I really didn't understand the way this, I didn't hear you clearly about this referendum that you were talking about. Can you re-explain it, maybe a little louder so I hear?
In terms of, so
You're saying hold off until November to have a referendum?
No.
Okay.
I'm saying that the state allows you to do that.
Okay.
You could submit your application prior to having a referendum. You have to commit to having a referendum. So some districts, depending on where they are in their process, will get the application in and schedule their referendum in November. So for example, if they're pushing into the summer, they get the application in, they don't want to push a referendum too quickly. A lot of municipalities will wait. They won't, because people are off in the summer, schools are out, those that come out and want to vote may not be around to do so. So, you know.
And there's the cost as well. So
Yeah.
the state recognizes that a town, undergoes a cost for a referendum to have the voting machine set up and so on and so forth. So the reason that they give you until November 15th is to, hold the referendum on election day. So that way you don't have to have a separate process.
If you didn't want to. Yeah.
If you didn't want to, yes. You can do it anytime you want, but the state allows you to.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just expound upon that and have Jim and Mark talk a little bit about the referendum timeline, even before we get to that, because I think there's an important piece there. As Councilor Hurley has just indicated, the referendum scheduled proposal is February. That's a very tight timeline. But the rationale behind that is about trying to get back time, if you will, in terms of ahead of what would traditionally be application in June and a referendum in November. So you're getting 8-month lead time and getting that referendum question out of the gate first. But it's tight, and I think everyone at this table's got to understand how tight that is. And you'll see, and when we go forward, in the timeline and the schedule, but I think they could better, to the cost escalation issues, and timing, they could maybe speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, escalation right now is running at about 5 to 6% that we're seeing on an annual basis. It was running about 8 to 9 a few years ago, well, up until last year. I think this year kind of slowed down a little bit. So, that escalation is 5% of your total project cost. That escalation gets applied to, your total project. So and then if you want to break that down on a monthly basis, that's how much your project, I would say, is increasing in cost, for every month that you wait. And some districts break it down by the week, because, time is money, especially in construction. You want to try to get in or start your construction process as soon as possible, because you want to beat the escalation. And typically, construction management firms will carry escalation either to the bid date or what they call midpoint of construction. So the sooner that process moves forward, the less possibility or the less value you're losing on the project.
Right, and so I guess what I'm also saying, and speak to the fact that a February referendum vote and approval means right out from there, that whole process of selecting the owner's rep,
Correct.
selecting, the architect,
Correct.
and those numbers all move forward 8 months ahead of what would traditionally be a November referendum.
Correct.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's important to note that in our cost estimates, we have escalation built into those numbers, right? So those escalation percentages are built into those cost estimates up through, I believe, midpoint of construction. And so we've got a 30-month duration for construction, 30 months of general conditions. That's the schedule's built on 30 months, and it identifies the cost, the escalation costs are carried through halfway through that 30-month mark. So the idea is that all of your materials have been ordered by that time, you're well into construction, there's nothing left halfway through construction that you're worried about purchasing, because you've already bought all your contracts, you've secured all your subcontractors, they're holding their numbers, right? So all of those things at that point no longer should impact you, or escalation shouldn't really impact your project once you're about halfway through construction. So that's why we factor in those numbers or our third-party cost estimator factors those in. So, but you can get ahead of that and that value, as you said, instead of waiting for design to start at the time of receiving your letter from the state 18 months from now. You could start 10 months into this, or even sooner, and you can get your professional team on board. It is an investment that you're going to make, that the town's going to have to upfront the costs for until you get that award letter and can send your first invoice to the state to be reimbursed for those. They are reimbursable costs. They just, you have to wait a little while to, yeah.
They are
So-
reimbursable, you just have to wait until you get your grant commitment letter before you can start requesting the state reimbursement.
Right.
Chairman,
Yes.
I just have a question. I'm confused as to why we would want to push a vote in February when we do a town budget, I think, in April, right?
Mhm.
And February is a very snowy time here in Connecticut. There's snowstorms that happen, schools gets canceled. It's harder for the elderly and some in the community to get out to do the vote. And as I understand, a referendum vote is not something that can be done by mail, correct? It has to be done in person? I mean, to get the best number of people to be at the polls, wouldn't it make sense and be more cost effective to wait until, 2 months later, especially since now that I learned you can wait until November actually to do the vote. If you say, and we gotta front money on top of it, it doesn't make sense to do it in.
Well, we have to front money no matter what we do.
Right.
That doesn't change
Yeah.
regardless when we have, and I'm the one that's pushing the February, the earlier time frame, so I'll be happy to answer this.
Sure.
A couple of things. I don't think there is an ideal time to hold a referendum if you're not going to do it on Election Day. I think you can come up with reasons no matter what date you pick. We have, obviously, we have the budget process going in March and April. That doesn't seem like a realistic time to hold a referendum on the middle school. Once we get to May, certainly that is an option, but, what my feeling is that the longer we wait, the more this is going to cost. And I think it's just time to let the voters vote on this. We can maybe wait till early March. No, maybe we can, but certainly early March may be a time frame we can look at a referendum date. But from my perspective, I think we need to get an answer from the voters in town what they want done with this school. And, let them vote on the renovate like new as soon as possible to keep costs down. We can pick up some time and hopefully we can condense this construction timeline and get this done sooner. And that was my thought process, why I was pushing for something quicker than waiting until after the budget season.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I think Cassandra's got a really valid point, and I think we've done referendum questions at the budget election day too. So I think it's a perfect time to do it, and I don't think waiting maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks or whatever longer to do it would really be that bad. So I think it's a great suggestion to do it in April.
The council
budget
will
meeting.
consider it.
Yeah,
We have to discuss it as a council, but
Yeah.
certainly we'll take that under consideration.
yeah.
Councilman?
Yeah.
Mr. Cook? So I definitely like the idea of an earlier renovation. I feel like people know about this as somebody that really, really wants us to get past. I think, looking at it from the perspective of getting engagement, the one thing I would ask is just to make sure any meetings or any information sessions that we're looking at the school calendar for February vacation dates. In the past, we've had meetings that were held while parents were on vacation regarding the middle school, and that was really tough because they're not here, they don't get a voice, they don't get a say. But I would love to see it sooner rather than later. I would just say consider, possibly end of February, because there's that 30-day quiet period too. So you have that Christmas break. If it was the end of February, you'd have that whole January to February 1st where you could do like the information things. And then there is a period, I believe, where administration has to, like a silence period, correct, Becky? Was
Yeah,
that right?
administration
Like the
can't-
30 days. So we would have all of like January to get information out. February would go a little quiet, would go quiet. But you'd have like that full month of January to, keep people engaged.
What if it snows? I'm sorry.
Well, then it snows. I mean, it's,
We had Wheelers on June 6th, and there was vacations too. So going in that time of year was tough as well, because people were already planning to go away and to do things in the June months.
I mean, yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm a numbers-oriented person, and I know you had mentioned trying to make things, Jim, as efficient as possible in terms of money, and I think it is our responsibility to talk with folks during this time, answer their questions, and I don't see any reason, if you're looking to wait till the end of February, what the big deal is to wait another 5 weeks to have it done during the budget vote that takes place. There's a savings to the town in terms of cost, to have a referendum, and then to have something 5 weeks later regarding the budget, I think kind of makes us look silly. Because you're going to have, people saying, well, wait a minute, why didn't you just do it during the budget? Why do we have to do this? I think that will pose more questions. Based on what you're saying on the annual basis, I honestly don't believe 2 months is going to make that much of a difference, or not, it's not even 2 months. If you want to do it at the end of February, you're looking at, the middle of April, which is when we traditionally hold our voting for our budget. It makes sense to have folks vote on both of those items. It's not a big deal. It gives us time, as I said, to go out and talk to people and make them feel comfortable with what they're voting for. I think you'll have a better shot at what you're looking for. And based on what you said, Jim, in terms of you're ready to go to submit, what that basically tells me is if we had the vote today and it was approved, you would probably submit something next week. So the fact that, we're going 10 months, 8 months, I think this has been going on long enough that we can still do it in an efficient manner and still be conscious of the costs to our taxpayers.
Well,
Mr.
thank you.
Chairman?
Yes.
If you don't mind, we're trying to figure something out here. So the budget vote in April is technically not a referendum. It's an adjourned town meeting.
Yeah.
And it happens only at the firehouse. And to my understanding, we haven't had a referendum since I've been with the town, but I believe all polling locations are open.
No.
Is that correct?
For what?
For referendums?
For referendum?
No.
Or is it
Firehouse.
We can add referendum questions down.
on to the budget vote?
Yes.
It's at the
Even though they're
firehouse.
two
I
separate
stood outside
Yep.
from 6 a.m.
processes?
Yep. we
It's at
go
the
back.
firehouse.
Yeah, I would double check on
Our
that.
town clerk is
There
going
was
to
one
double.
There was
Okay.
one year where we actually had to vote a top to our schools to vote, and then we were for the referendum, and then we were asked to go to the firehouse for the budget.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, we don't want to do that.
No.
That would be awful.
That's what happened.
Yeah, so let's not do that again.
It's there, but everybody,
She said, if you want all four districts.
so it does exist.
Yeah.
It has happened in our town.
A quick question. Do you folks have any experience of the length of time that towns have used that have been successful in? Because our goal is to get this referendum successfully passed.
Well,
Do you have any history of the time of year that they are most successful and the length of time? Because all towns do have some type of budget vote. And do you have any historical data on when it is the most successful time to have a referendum of this type?
We've been involved in, it's always up to the town, obviously, as to how quickly they want to move forward with the referendum. We've been involved in situations where they've had 2 weeks where they set the question, and had a successful referendum, and we've been involved where they've had 3 months unsuccessful referendum, and we've been involved where they've had,
You don't have any data stored that you have built up historically in your
we've been involved in a
different
number
municipalities.
we've been involved in a number of referendums, anywhere from 10 months to 2 weeks, and, with various outcomes.
So I'll tell you what we've learned, at least what I've learned a little bit along the way in terms of what, on the communication consulting side will tell you that summers are not great for referendums. Right? So we're thinking about times of the year that because folks are always on vacation, it's hard to get people to come to referendums. Election time is not always great, but it always depends on how stressed it is. I've seen a lot of towns not do it at the budget time. They either wait before or after, because a lot of times they'll say, we want to get through the budget before we do this, or they want it out of the way so that they can focus on the budget. So it's hard to say. It really comes down to what works best for all of you, and how educated you feel the public is about this particular project, and how much time you think you need, or is there any education needed, considering this process has been going on for quite some time. And so it really comes down to the feeling that you all have in terms of, you want this to be a successful referendum, so you want to have that feeling of confidence going in when you're going to put it out. And so that's does it lose momentum if you wait too long? Does it gain momentum if folks have no idea that this is even coming, and then suddenly, there's a middle school referendum, right? So there's some of those things that you have to psychologically think about with voters that we've, just picked up along the way as we've learned from communication specialists along the way. So I don't know if that helps answer your question. I do think that we...
I asked if you had any historical data, and apparently you do not. I mean, it's not...
it's...
referendums that are held at a certain time or certain length. There's no history that says one approach is better than the other. It really fits into a local municipality.
That's correct.
And our feeling is that it would be best to do this early on, as early as possible, to get it accomplished prior to then going and getting the budget.
You know your town better than we do. And again, we've seen, like I said, we've seen it where it was 2 weeks, and it passed. And we've seen it, 2 to 3 months and it's failed. We've seen, 10 months and it's passed. So it really all depends on the town, and really everybody here who's a resident of the town, you guys have the best feel for that, and understand your contingency, and should make that decision based on your understanding of the people within Plainville.
Can you just hold on one sec? Councilman Gettman just had a question, I believe.
I just want a clarification from the town clerk on holding the referendum and the budget on the same day.
I have to look into what the charter says. I don't know.
Okay. All right. Does anybody remember why we had to go to our polling location and then to the firehouse?
The referendum and one was the budget.
Well, and now the budget vote is technically an adjourned town meeting.
Right.
So there's special language for that. There's also special language for a referendum, and again, we'll check, and that's one of the follow-ups coming out of here we'll do, is that I'm not sure being called a referendum that is a different set of criteria than an adjourned town meeting.
Okay. I didn't know if she was able to clarify it.
Can and cannot do in an adjourned town meeting.
Oh, yeah, there's lots of guidelines about what you can and can't do, yeah. You can't do, you don't have absentee ballots, you don't have, there's a whole, it's a completely different process as far as how.
But could we have absentee ballots on a referendum?
No. State statute doesn't allow it.
No.
Pardon?
State statute does not allow it.
So you cannot have them on referendum? Or in town, or
Or the
in
adjourned
town.
town
So
meeting.
there's no advantage to having,
Yep. And go ahead, Jim.
I just wanted to say that I agree with you on your opening remark there when you said about the February date and that particular thing. I think it's important that we separate the apples and the oranges and not confuse people to what they're going to go vote. You put two things in the booth and people are like, where do I go from here? And this is an important issue. It's something that we all ran on. Give the people the opportunity to speak. And I think the sooner they get the opportunity to speak, we'll know what our job is for the next, looks like 4 years here. But we'll be here for 2 of it. But I think it also will give us an opportunity, as you kind of reflected to get started earlier doing some of these things about putting the design team together, putting the staff together that needs to make this happen. If we get the go-ahead from the people. If we gotta wait till May, it's pushing it out further and further and further. It's time to either not do it because the people said don't do it, or do it because they said do it. Plain and simple.
Councilman Ozarko? I
Yes.
just wanted to add that I believe when we have votes at schools, the schools are closed. So we would be doing it during April vacation. So, just advocating for the parents, I don't think we should do a school vote when school's on vacation. So I would
You're
definitely.
talking about the budget vote.
The budget, if we were to do it at the schools, like when we have elections at the schools are generally closed. We generally don't have people going in and voting while school's in sessions and kids are there,
Well,
right?
there's ways out and around. it.
Yeah, and I'll also look
It's
at
not
the
pretty.
April budget date, with April vacation. So, I really take a strong look at that, because I wouldn't want to do it during vacation
I
time.
think I'd like to get back to the agenda, and we'll have more discussion a little bit later. But I think for now, all the comments, certainly the council should take all these comments tonight into account. I'm sure we're going to be talking about this a little bit at our next regular meeting on December 4th. But yeah, if anyone has any other thoughts, please feel free to email the town manager. He'll make sure he disseminates it to all of us. Yes?
If we just make one, we just did some quick math on that escalation on 5%, and per month it's 258,000.
Say that again? Just
So, go ahead.
So I just calculated on a per-month basis what escalation would be. I just rounded up to 62 million. It's $258,000.
Okay. Everybody hear that?
No.
For every month, it's about, the escalation's about $258,000 for every month that goes by.
It's about 3 million a year, I think that's what it looked like.
Like I said, February.
But like I said, we're not going to decide that tonight. And I appreciate everyone's comments, and I think certainly we need to incorporate all these comments, and as the council discusses it, we certainly will think about all of this. All right. I'm not even sure, are we up to 4 yet on the agenda?
We need to back in here on that. So.
Don't worry, only 3 more hours, everyone.
I said, think that's
We'll be
where we
done.
are.
Funny, not funny.
So
Yeah.
we are up to item 4. Are we all set?
Yeah,
through
debt
item
service,
3?
yep. And we'll ask Rob Uden to,
And where's the rock star? There he is. You don't have any entrance music or anything?
Play some Metallica next time.
Right? That's what we need.
want to hand him.
So I guess I'll stand here. Oh, yeah, I would need this, huh? There. Oh, there we go. Okay. So I'm Rob Uden, Director of Finance for both the town and the Plainville Community Schools. Now that we've had the exciting part of the presentation, it's my turn to kind of show you how we're going to pay for all this, so I'm the bad guy. But there is good news in my presentation, so no worries. Most of you have seen this presentation before, so I will not go over every number that you're looking at both on paper and, excuse me, on the screen. But what I want to emphasize is that this part of the presentation is the debt service, or is part of, it shows the debt service piece of our budget, and only the debt service piece of our budget, and how the debt service piece of our budget impacts our mill rate. It doesn't take into consideration anything else budgetarily, town government, Board of Ed, nothing else. This is just the debt service piece of our budget, and how this project and others will impact the potential mill rate. Again, these numbers are estimates. We don't have a crystal ball. You know, we're talking about a project timeline that's 3-4 years. This debt schedule goes out to fiscal year 29, June 30th, 29. Again, it's estimates, okay? Based on the best and most current information we have, i.e. the marketplace we're living in today, okay? Over the years, we have done, I feel, a very, very good job with our debt schedules, our debt service line items. We've had refinancings of most of our debts, and we are in a very, very good position from a debt standpoint to handle this project and, quite honestly, many other projects. It's depending on how you want to, when you want to finance them, how you want to pay for them, and things like that. So this schedule kind of goes through, you know, the next current year we're in, fiscal year 24, which is on top, 25 next year, which is the budget cycle we will be getting over the next several months. And it kind of looks at everything. And remember, our debt service covers projects that are not only Board of Education based, they're Public Works, police, fire, whatever town department, Board of Ed, whatever bigger projects are needed that we need to, you know, spend big dollars on, we have to usually bond for these items. So what I just kind of want to point out is that every highlighted yellow number or year are currently known figures, okay? That's, if we do nothing today and nothing for the next 5 years, those yellow numbers will still be valid, okay? That's what our current debt schedules are by year in both principal and interest, okay? So our fund balance as of June 30th, which is the last fiscal year it just closed, in our debt service fund only. This is not general fund balance, this is debt service fund balance only, okay? There is a difference. Is about $802,000, okay? With our debt scheduled, our debt budget this year is $3.9 million. And just as a refresher, our budget for debt service over the last 4 or 5 years, at least, has been $4.4 million. This year in '24, we gave back $500,000, and at the time during the budget process for other reasons, at the time we did say that we may come back to the council and request that $500,000 back in the subsequent budget, which again is coming up in the next couple of months for fiscal year 25. This analysis includes getting the $500,000 back and keeping the level, again, at $4.4 million going forward in perpetuity, okay? That $500,000, when we do ask for it in the next couple of months, will not have an impact on the taxpayers because we received revenue this current year that we were not anticipating for other purposes that will essentially build up a fund that we're going to increase the budget for. So there's really no mill rate impact on this additional $500,000 request that we will be making in 25. Again, going out to 25, our debt schedule would be $2.7 million based on current debt we have. If we budget $4.4 million, we have a savings of $1.7 million roughly. But we also have other projects that we may need to bond for in 25. We don't know what they are yet. Again, like this, nothing's been decided yet. We don't know, but we're targeting a $10 million bond offering in 2025. Okay, it could be used for roads, could be used for public works, could be used for police. We don't know yet. But assuming we do that, based on current market conditions, we're estimating an interest rate of 5%. Okay. We would time the bonding process towards the end of the fiscal year, which means we would push the principal payment out to fiscal year 26. We would only have an interest payment in 25. Based on current market conditions, we are also assuming a premium would come back to us. Okay. We would recommend to put that premium into our debt service fund. Okay. So if our crystal ball is clear and accurate, When we do all of this, in '25, we budget $4.4 million, issue $10 million in debt, only pay an interest payment, get a premium. We would spend for the year, all of that, $2.6 million, we put 1.8 back to our fund balance. So at the end of '24, our debt service fund balance only would be $2.7 million.
And Rob, can I just ask, can you explain what a premium is? Just,
Yes.
like, pretend I'm in 5th grade.
So, municipal, and our town manager can explain a little better than I can, but I'll simplify and say that premium is based on market or interest rates. So what we can get by putting money in the bank versus what we would get from an investor investing in us. Municipalities, bonds are good. We're not going anywhere. We're not going to go out of business, so one would think. But, you know, so investors look to us as a stable entity, continuing entity. We're not going to go away. Hey, they'll pay it back, okay? We're going to get our money back. So they essentially say, hey, you know, the interest rates today are X. We're going to give you Y, because you're a good bet, okay? So we keep some of that money, and typically in the past when we have had premiums, we put the money into the project, not into debt service fund. At the end of the day, you're putting money in a project cost, you're saving money there. This way you're saving money in debt service costs. At the end of the day, you're still saving money. You're getting additional money. I think that's kind of the
That basically is based on our Moody's A1 rating, right?
Yes, we are AA3.
Yeah.
So our rating is AA3 for Moody's, and which is the second highest rating you can have. You know, in Connecticut, you know, essentially Fairfield County, they're above us, West Hartford's above us, and everybody else is below us. So we are in the upper echelon from our debt rating, primarily because of what we've done with debt over the past several years. And I'll graphically show some of these numbers, and you can really see that where we are and how good of a position we're in debt-wise, okay, going forward. And like I said, again, the crystal ball is clear. We're at $2.7 million at the end of '24. Now this project comes on board. We need to, you know, start putting cash in our pocket again to pay for some of these upfront costs that we might have already incurred, and/or some of the, you know, bigger construction costs that may begin. So in 2026, we're saying, okay, if we do this $10 million bond in '25, now we have a principal payment and interest. And in '26, we would do the same thing. We would bond now an additional $13 million. You know, this project, from all the estimates and timelines and all that, would cost the town about $25.7 million, I believe. I'm rounding up to 26 million, okay? I want to say that we're not going to bond all of it at one time. We time the market. We don't need $26 million in the bank at one time because we're not paying out $26 million at one time. Well, a lot of this is reimbursable. We pay it out, we get it back. Bonding is the same thing. It's just a bigger chunk of money coming in, get back to us, versus going to the state and getting reimbursement for other costs. So we would bond this in '26 again at the end of the year. And I think one thing I forgot to say was that we normally bond for 20 years. School projects, the state allows us to bond up to 30 years. Obviously, the longer your bond, the more interest you pay, blah, blah, blah. It's no different than a mortgage. Okay, 15-year mortgage versus a 30-year, you're going to pay more interest on a 30. So we typically have always done this over 20 years. What this analysis has taken into consideration is the $10 million, which we're targeting to be anything else other than Board of Ed type projects. The $13 million we're going to say is a Board of Ed project. We're going to target 22 years, okay? 2 years more than normal, but the numbers fit into the analysis a little bit better, if you will, okay? So at the end, if we were to do this, we would budget in '26, $4.4 million again. We'd only be spending $3.4 million, again, putting another $1 million into our debt service fund balance. '27 comes along, we might need the second half of this $26 million. So we'll bond another $13 million in '27. So now, we have the $10 million bond on the books in '25. We have the first half of the $13 million bond in '26 coming on the books, and now we're doing the second half in '27. At the end of the day, Our budget's still 4.4 million, but we're spending 4.5. We're in a lost position of 100 grand or so. Well, because we have fund balance reserve in our debt service fund, we're able to absorb that loss for that year without impacting the mill rate for debt service only. There'd be zero impact on debt service from a mill rate standpoint. Taking that out again, two more years, or 28 and 29, we would have larger losses because we would have more principal payments coming, excuse me, on the books. But again, the larger losses for those years from a debt service standpoint only would be absorbed by the debt service fund balance. No change to budgetary line item. Debt service is $4.4 million. Okay. I know I threw a lot of numbers at you. These are all these numbers going out. Maturity, same thing. Okay, that's page 2 of your handout. But I think what is really a more important chart is this graph. Okay. You know it's small up here, so look at it in front of you. We're in 2024. This is assuming a $4.4 million budget line, and again, only for debt service. So this is where our debt service costs, our actual existing debt service costs, are below this line. So this change is going back into the fund balance of debt service. So now we issue 10 million in 25, 13 in 26, 13 in 27. Now you see our line is above, our costs are above our budget. But you notice, within 5 years, again, keeping the budget at 4.4 million, we are again below that line. In those 5 years that we are above our budget, that difference is made up and using the debt service fund balance, zero impact to the taxpayers from a general fund budget standpoint of debt service only. Again, doesn't include any parts of the budget other than debt service, just debt service of 4.4 million. So at the end of the day, again, the good news I was saying is that this project, and/or any other project for that matter, keeping the debt service at 4.4 million, bonding $36 million over the next 5 years, will have a zero impact on the mill rate for the debt service line. Excuse me, only. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, I
Yeah.
have a question.
Go ahead.
This is a circle back to something that you had said, I believe it was on the 10/23 meeting when you were updating us on some figures for this particular item. I believe you had said at that meeting 20 years, and I want to make sure I get the right, for 22 years, the total cost to the taxpayer projected. I know you can't predict, but just total cost projection, please.
Yeah, it's like $41 million, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
That's principal and interest, again, assuming a 5% interest rate, which we do not know. And again, if it's 22 years, I mean, the market may change, maybe we'll decide 20 years. We time the market to the best of our ability at the time when these monies and funds are needed. So, and again, the market could change, we were in an environment 3, 4, 5, less 15 years where rates were really, really good, historically low. I don't have a crystal ball, but I don't think rates are going to go back down that low. But, they're not going to be like they were in 1979 either, 20%. So this 5% is an estimate, and so that $41 million is also an estimate. We don't know. We really don't.
What's the interest rate now, do you think? Just today, just to compare,
Based on what our financial advisors are saying, they're saying use the 5%. I mean, I see some things coming in at 3.7, 4.3, and as high as 5.
Okay.
So it really depends on your rating, your bond rating, which we're good. So I would assume we would be less than 5%, but I don't want to put assumptions and numbers that are lower and all of a sudden they come in higher. I don't want to do that. So yeah, the caveat is that this might be higher than what it actually comes in at. So we won't know until we actually go out to market.
The impetus is on us to keep us at the rating we are at, or even at best to improve that rating.
any questions or comments related to debt service?
It's like we printed before.
All right. You're free to go.
Wow, thank you.
All right, so who's on item number 5, the next steps to submit Renovate Like New? Are we back to that side of the table?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So the next steps to submit the application would be obviously a successful referendum. And then from there, we would compile all the information, which I think we have a good majority of, and submit the grant application. So it's, really it's contingent at this point on a successful referendum.
Yeah, there are, yeah, there is a schedule, essentially the nitty-gritty in terms of the next proposed steps would be the council on the scheduled meeting for December 18th. There would be some action items that they would need to do. 1, introduce an ordinance. 2, send the project to planning and zoning on what's called an 824 referral, and then set the date for a public hearing. Those are essentially the starting block, if you will, to get this process in motion. And then it all leads, culminates in leads up to a referendum, and then, if successful, goes to the June 30th application date.
And so typically it would be a couple of weeks at least to process everything.
Yeah, just to make sure we have everything in order.
All right. Any questions? All right. I guess we're up to the item 6, the proposed referendum schedule.
Yeah, and that again, the December 18th meeting, the council would have to be prepared to set that date, whether it's February, March, wherever.
Okay.
But if it was going to be projected longer, I guess, this is working backwards from a February, like that's the minimum, right? So if you come to December meeting, decide, we're just going to push this out, then there's no rush. But this would get it done if you want a February meeting. So it essentially sets it in motion.
All right, so I know at this point, any questions on what the town manager just said? Anybody? I know there's comments from myself and the board chair. I really don't, I'd rather just open it up for discussion at this point, if there's anything we want to just talk about, unless there's something specific you want to say. I mean, I think we all understand where we are and where we want to go, but as I said before, the council does have some decisions to make, and we will be making those over the next month. But, beyond that, anyone have any questions or comments they want to share?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Just a couple of thoughts on the scheduling of the referendum day. I certainly believe we should do it earlier rather than later, whether it's late February or early March, I think would be acceptable. And a couple of reasons. I think that would give us the certainty knowing that this is going forth. We're going to have to invest money up front anyhow. That, as was indicated, will be later reimbursed. But I think that on several levels, it's advantageous to do that with, knowing that it's a certainty and that we are indeed going to be renovating like new in the middle school. And in terms of November, my concern was that, that's almost another year away. And I know we would have to take some steps anyhow, but it is certainly delaying the vote, I think, for almost a year. And just to think about it, it's also going to be a very heated election year. We're going to have a presidential election, and I think that very well could drown out and distract a lot of attention. I've always kind of felt that the referendums that I've seen that were standalone, single events, do give people the opportunity to really focus and to learn more about the local issue on which they'll be voting. And I think that's another thing that we should consider.
All right, anyone else? Anything to say?
If I may, Steve? Yeah. Chris?
Indeed. Really? I have been working out, Foster.
Lenny, come on.
Do I look bigger, Foster?
Don't take that ball.
Thank you, I'm taking that as a compliment. Can't wait to
No,
tell
I'm
my
saying
kids.
I'm good. But my point really is that we have inertia on our side right now. And that, to me, makes a lot of sense for having a referendum as quickly as possible while this issue is in the voters' mind. It was very clearly expressed, just 4 weeks ago, of the importance of this issue. And I think that while we have this in the voters' mind, it's going to make less work for anyone who is trying to support this to bring it back to their attention again. This is in their minds right now. Keep that in the forefront, because if we delay this any longer, the real depressing fact is, looking out, it's going to be 2028 before we really get the kids in this building. That means that any of our students in the 5th grade right now, if we do the best job we possibly can, still are not going to be able to be in a renovated middle school building. And as it was pointed out earlier, the longer we wait on this, the more the work that is going to have to be done on this structure. So that, and the more deterioration that we're going to have to put up with as the days pass by. And this 4-year drag has got to be moved forward. So I think now that we have the voters' attention, it's easier for all of us who want to support this referendum to get this, it's in their attention, just keep it in their attention rather than having to re-energize it. If we put it off into the end of the summer to the early fall, as Councilman Moretti has pointed out, see, I get named right here once in a while. At that particular point in time, then we're going to have a real job, because we're going to be dealing with a national election, and that's going to take away all of the thunder. And so I think it is incumbent upon us to put our best effort forward as a combined town council and a combined Board of Education to work together on this project and do this for the students in our town.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I understand what Rosemary was saying about having it at separate times and having, a different thought process for each one. But I still think that it would be better for everyone voting for this, that they know what is happening with the budget beforehand. And I know I would feel more comfortable voting on something if I know how the mill rate's going to look and all that stuff too. So I still think that at least after we have numbers for the budget would be a better time to have the referendum.
Okay, anyone else?
Councilman Zorka?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to, based on what
You're
Councilman
next.
Gettleman had commented regarding the referendum, and as I was sitting here thinking about it, the last time we did this was during the vote for the fire truck.
That's what I was thinking it was.
It was,
Yeah.
so we had the referendum at the schools, and I believe the schools were open that day.
Oh, that's why.
And then we went to the fire station to do the budget.
Yep, you're right.
They actually, the people in there were saying, make sure you go here to do this, we have to do it separate because of everything. So, but that's why it was done that way.
Yep.
Because that was the last referendum that was done at the same time.
Yep. So doing it on budget day is not a good
Historically,
idea.
what the turnout on that date was, and compare the results on that referendum and going back to others? I seem to recall, I think it was a rather low turnout on that one, but I'm not sure.
I don't have the numbers memorized now. I mean, we could find out, but.
Yeah, I think it might be helpful to know those.
I would just think simple is a good way to go. We did the last renovation vote at the firehouse. It was pretty recent in recent years. So, I think that's fresh in people's minds to go to the fire station to vote on that. And I definitely think it's better to have, the one issue, to Rosemary's point, people can, have the opportunity to really learn and read up on that issue. And I'm pretty confident in the community being pretty well-versed in this because we've already waited, almost 2 years. So it's fresh in their minds right now.
Yes.
I had a question. Ms. Terrell, what was the total budget for the school last year?
The total budget for Plainville Community Schools? last year?
Yeah.
That was 41.
41.
Yeah.
41 million?
Oh,
So,
and change.
okay, so.
Lots of change.
Yeah. I hope that by going in February and asking the voters for 60-something million, even though we're getting reimbursed, it's still 60-something million on that.
That's what the question's going to say, yes.
Yep.
That we're gonna ask them in February for 60+ million. And then a month and a half later, we're gonna ask them for 41 million again for education. I hope that doing it before the budget does not jeopardize our school budget passing. I'm just,
No, and that's a fair point. I mean,
you have to-
nobody has a crystal ball, but,
I think it's,
we're also,
I'm not
trying to
saying-
pass a budget and then waiting, even if we reverse it, it's still the same question, I think.
Right.
But, yeah,
I think it behooves us as individuals and as members of this town to explain what's going on as best we can and really emphasize what Rob just told us. I mean, this will not technically, like the way you look at budgets, it won't affect our budget, our mill rate. So we have to get that message out along with the fact of doing an early vote on this to incorporate what Foster had said, that we do have the momentum. We were sent here, I think, to do this job, to give the people the opportunity to say yes or no. And I don't know what other than that, there's no sense in waiting. Waiting is what's caused this whole upheaval in the first place.
And costs us $3 million.
Yes. And the bottom line, our students are in not a
In the hole for
very good
another year.
school.
Yeah.
anyone else? Just to maybe,
I'll just say,
You wanna
a couple
say it?
things,
Yeah.
We, as far as, numbers and trying to figure out, what happened last time, and, I've been through this enough times to know that every single issue is different. It, affects different people. There's no way to compare what can happen, and everything is, there's no perfect time. One budget vote will impact the second budget vote, but it's incumbent on us, like Dan said, to really be leaders in the community to say, this is what we need to do, and to make sure that Board of Education and the town do a really good job of communicating to folks and letting them know why we're doing this and why it makes sense, because it makes sense to do it sooner rather than later. I was not sold either way. My first thought was February. Are you kidding me? That's crazy as far as communication, and I know what kind of work it takes to roll out a plan like that. And then I thought, but then by February you're done. So that was the next thought. So, but when you look at what we can save per month based on getting ahead of it, it makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense to kind of strike while the iron's hot. You've got people's attention on this project, so it should be easier to pass through. And so, that would be my thought. And it is really incumbent on all of us, though, to advocate for it ourselves, make sure that, we try and be as, promote it as much as we can and be as positive as we can about it. And so I did too want to just thank everyone for coming out. I didn't say that earlier, and having this discussion. The timeline of the, setting the referendum is on the council's wheelhouse, and so I'm sure they'll hear from a lot of folks about their opinions, but it's, there's no perfect time. But whatever date comes to pass, again, we just have to work.
Well, maybe just to finish up, the project's going to move forward. We're going to give the voters an opportunity to vote on it, and that's me personally speaking. Certainly, we have to take some formal votes to make it happen, but, all the comments, I will certainly take them, and I hope all the council members would take all the comments we heard tonight under consideration as we go forward. Again, if anyone has anything else they think we missed or any additional information we need, please feel free to reach out to us through email or however, or cell phone, however you want. And yeah, as we get into December, we're going to be starting to make some decisions. So, I hope, and it sounds like we do have, the backing from these two groups as far as, yes, let's give the voters an opportunity to vote on a renovate like new project, and once we get the details and the date set, that we still can all get behind it, regardless if you think it's too late, too soon, too close, too far away from budget season. But I hope we all keep that in mind as we go forward. So if no one has any other questions or comments, do you want to adjourn first, technically?
Yeah, looks like I'm adjourning first. So just before I ask for the adjournment on behalf of the board, I would like to again thank everyone for coming out. This was kind of even though we've heard it all before, I don't know if we've heard it all kind of like in this context. From my old brain, I appreciated it all. So I'd just like to say thank you. So can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, I'm gonna do Roberta, because I saw her finger first. And Foster, you want to do second?
Sure.
All right, thank you. So all in favor on the board?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, and motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.